The San Diego Padres are a team that's flown right under the radar throughout most of the regular season this year, and this is for a variety of different reasons, with the main one being that they were valid to be flying under the radar through the first half of the year. Like, it was very appropriate for how the team was, not because they were a bad team, they weren't, but they weren't a good team either. So what were they? The alternative of those two. Right smack in the middle, like they couldn't have been more meh in the first half. Through the first literal half of the season, the first 82 games, the Padres went 41-41. It just seemed like an unfortunate continuation of last year where the Padres, despite having a good roster, were just not good enough. Like, you could tell they were pretty close to being a good team, but they just couldn't get to that next level, even in a year where 84 freaking games got you to the postseason. It also wasn't ideal that Fernando Tatis Jr. went on the injured list for 2 months this year after playing in the team's first 80 games, so you have a mid-team that just lost their number one star. But ironically, this was around when the Padres started getting everything together. Tatis's last game before going on the injured list for a while was on June 21st. Since June 22nd, the Padres have the best team in baseball. Now, no, this isn't some anti-Tatis propaganda. I'm just noting the coincidence of this, and he's even since recently come back and been awesome. But there's a lot that's gone into the Padres being baseball's best team for most of the year now. But there was one game in particular that really kicked things off. Really quick, if you're alive, like the video and subscribe if you haven't yet, or just wait to see if you enjoy the video and then make a decision. That works too. So like I said, the Padres were exactly 500 through the first half of games. 41-41. Tatis just went on the shelf. Things don't look particularly awful, but they obviously don't look good either. And in comes the Nationals to town. And after a hard-fought game, the Padres were just an out away from losing in extras to the Nationals. Down one, but with the tying and winning runs in scoring position. With first base open, the Nats decided to put up 4 fingers and send Luis Arraez over to first base. So what the Nats were basically saying here was that they preferred to face Jurickson Profar, who was up next, and were willing to just forfeit an at-bat to Arraez so that can happen. And naturally, this will put a chip on Profar's shoulders, on anyone's shoulders who's competitive. And with the count 0-2 and the Nats just a strike away now from winning the game, they made another mistake, throwing up and into Profar. So there are multiple reasons to be annoyed as a competitor in Profar's position, and after throwing him 6 straight fastballs, Nats pitcher Hunter Harvey finally went with a changeup, and Profar sent it over the heads of the outfielders for a walk-off ground rule double. And during the celebration, went nuts, partly in the direction toward the Nationals dugout, kind of like, how about that? Profar claimed he was celebrating toward the fans, which he was, to be fair, but also, to be fair to the Nationals, he was doing it by the Nats dugout. He knew what he was doing, and whatever, he's pumped and felt disrespected, something he later said. He can do that, that's fine. But the very next day, when walking up to the plate for the first time during the second game, Nats catcher Kyber Ruiz had some words for Profar. And according to Ruiz, he actually planned not to say anything to Profar, but got caught up in the adrenaline of the moment, and because of that, the bench is cleared. Ruiz just wanted to let Profar know he should respect them more, and nothing too crazy happened once the bench is cleared, although on the very next pitch by Mackenzie Gore, Profar would be hit in the ankle, but this actually was sheer awful timing by the Nats. It wasn't intentional, although Padres manager Mike Schilt naturally came out to defend his guy and wanting Gore to get ejected, getting himself ejected in the process. So there's already so much going on, and as if the crowd wasn't already so into it, Manny Machado said, "Watch this," taking the very next pitch out for a 2-run homer. And as if things couldn't get more perfect, Profar ended up going deep later in this game, taking it steps further by doing it with the bases loaded. I mean, just Hollywood type stuff in a game the Padres went on to win. And it was at this moment where I realized this Padres team was sending us all a message that they're coming for blood, and they've since only made that more clear. As for specifics on that, let's start with the pitching. As expected, Dylan Cease has been a massive and important addition to San Diego, after getting dealt away from the depths of hell the Chicago White Sox. For real though, imagine being Dylan Cease, someone who was halfway into spring training with what was about to be the worst team in baseball history before being traded to a team that's been in some ways the best this year. Good for him. Nobody dodged a bigger bullet until Donald Trump did, twice now. So he takes the cake, but for a while, Cease was at the top in the dodging bullets category, and he's been awesome. He's continued the reliability the White Sox were able to count on, making every start this year for the Padres, a year that will be the 4th straight he's done such a thing. He's taken the ball, eaten up innings, and been the Padres' ace in the process, striking a ton of guys out, has a good ERA. There's really nothing more to ask for from this guy. Then comes Michael King, who's been the second best and most reliable starter, who also was traded traded to the Padres before the season, which makes the two most important pieces of the 2024 rotation new guys. So credit to general manager AJ Preller for that. I feel like he's got a lot of shit from Padres fans over the years, so I want to make sure he gets his praise. After being a Yankee his whole career, King was sent to San Diego in the Juan Soto trade, but here's the catch. King was never really a starter, like ever. Sure, he made starts here and there with the Yankees, making the most in 2023 with 9, but that was it, 9. And the most innings he'd thrown in a season were about like 100, also in 2023. Well, the Padres said, screw that, you're a damn starter, and he's been just that, exploding by that previous career high in innings this season, putting up a low ERA in the process along with a high strikeout rate. Nothing's really changed from King as a reliever, which is pretty cool. Basically the same guy he was in New York, just a starter. He's made it look really easy, so shout out to him. And these two new guys at the top, Cease and King, have really been clutch for an otherwise injury-riddled starting rotation. The bullpen hasn't been anything that special either, well, until they added 3 more relievers at the deadline, in which I'll admit I didn't like. Well, at least somewhat, because yeah, they got some great arms, but it felt like they gave up a lot for those arms. But you know what? Maybe it's for the best. Tanner Scott, the lefty they got from Miami, only has 1 year left, so I didn't love the trade even though he was so damn good. But they also got Brian the Hoe, along with Scott, and made a separate trade with the other Florida team, getting Jason Adam, another great reliever. And these guys have come just as advertised. It's insane. Ironically, Scott, who was looked at to be the best reliever they added, has been the worst of the 3, but that's more a testament to how insane the other 2 have been, because Scott's still been good. But meanwhile, the Ho has a .90 ERA at the time of this video since joining the Padres. He's been great despite not being a big strikeout threat. He really doesn't strike many people out, but he's been great at letting nothing happen whenever someone makes contact off of him. Then you have Jason Adam, who does strike people out and has a .40 ERA at the time of this video since joining San Diego. It's absurd. So to add these guys only makes the closer they already had in Robert Suarez better, because he naturally doesn't have as much pressure surrounding him, but rather more help. So what next? The offense. The Padres offense isn't some juggernaut. It's not some monumentally groundbreaking group of hitters having insane years, but it's a bunch of good to really good hitters. It's a lot more balanced of a lineup than last year somehow without Juan Soto. Most of the hitters this year have been above average with the bat, and I gotta begin with Jurickson Profar. He started out the gate hot and hasn't really stopped being productive all year long. Not when Dodgers catcher Will Smith called him irrelevant, not when the Nationals messed with him, and not in any of the time since. He's been awesome, and it's great to finally see him have the breakout year he's kind of been expecting to have. I mentioned the new guys for the pitching, and there's a lot of them, but the new guy on offense, Luis Arraez, who was traded in the middle of the season, has been legitimately insane. I know batting average isn't valued like it used to be. I know Arraez provides like 0 power. I know all of that, but we really need to appreciate what this man has been doing. He's the modern day Tony Gwynn in an era where that seems unheard of, and it's so fascinating. Arraez just doesn't strike out. He just refuses to strike out. He doesn't want to do it, so he doesn't do it, but he also doesn't walk either. You're never going to get him swinging and missing at something out of the zone, but neither will you get him looking at something in the zone. So he basically swings at everything, but he also makes contact with everything. It's so cool. Like, he's basically the only hitter in baseball who's good at this. He goes up there looking to put the ball in play, and he does almost every time. He's probably going to win the batting title again. And what that would mean is 3 straight batting titles, all with different teams. Well, mostly, since he was still on the Marlins for a little this year. How insane is that? It's just such an interesting type of hitter and so different to what we're used to in today's game. It's really cool. Manny Machado, for the most part, although not putting up MVP type numbers, has been pretty good. He's still kind of like the leader of the team. He's still just doing everything right. Fernando Tatis Jr. is back, and since returning at the beginning of September, he's been awesome. Right back to the superstar we all know and love. Cue the haters in the comments rushing to confess their hate for Tatis, but he's been great and fun. The Padres are better off with him, and so is baseball, and it's great to see him back on a Padres team that's storming to October. I saved the best for last, the most exciting hitter for last, and that's the rookie, Jackson Merrill. I'm convinced Mr. Freeze is this man's father, considering how much ice he has in his veins. He does not miss. There was a point in the season where Merrill hit 4 game-tying home runs in the 8th inning or later in the span of 12 days, becoming the first player in big league history to hit 4 such homers in a span of 50 days or less in the regular season. As of today, Jackson Merrill has 6 game-tying or go-ahead home runs in the 8th inning or later this season, more than anyone in baseball. This guy is the ultimate anti-garbage time player, and the craziest part, he's 21. He wasn't even old enough to legally drink when the season began, and here he is being the clutchest player in the game, while also being someone who many would argue is the Rookie of the Year. Paul Skeens is probably going to win it, and it's hard to argue against that, but Merrill should not at all go unnoticed. He's been so good. And again, this is his first year. He's 21. And after sweeping the Giants recently in San Francisco, the Padres went 20 games over 500 for the first time since 2010. This is pretty clearly the best Padres team since probably that year. And it's crazy knowing how lackluster they were just a few months ago. Now, not only are they storming well on their way back into the postseason after missing last year, but forget just a wild card spot. They have a legitimate shot at the division. And when you look at every other team in their roster, none of them are blatantly ahead of San Diego. There's really nothing stopping this team from being the best, which is why they're a legit threat to anybody, whether it's the Phillies, the Brewers, the D-backs, or any of the other wildcard teams, or the Dodgers for the division that's in reach to win. But whether that happens or not, it's good to see the Padres coming back together this year and figuring it out in such a big way. You also, again, have to shout out AJ Preller for adding 6 of the most important pieces of the team this year, with 5 of those being pitching pieces. He's come through clutch. Everyone's been clutch. Jackson Merrill's been the most clutch. The pitching additions have come through. Tatis is back. Everything is coming up Padres this year on a team that all of a sudden has the chance to be the best in baseball. Let me know your thoughts, and thank you for watching.